Okay, we sitting here working on a few things. Today, our flint knapping that we're going to try to do our video on. I have a good friend. His name is Vyrl Keeter. He is a Cherokee national treasure. He's 90 years old. The knowledge this man has in his head about flint knapping. When I'm trying to learn a few things, I like to get the best, and I do believe he is the best flint knapper I've ever seen in my life. Good morning, everybody. John Brown here again with you. Got my good friend Mark back on the camera, trying to do some more filming for us. Today we're going to kind of do some, get some footage of some flint making, arrowhead making, flint knapping, I guess is actually what they call it. This piece right here, this is an arrowhead. I guarantee you, this is huge. A good friend of mine you'll meet here in just a little bit. His name is Vyrl Keeter. He's a Cherokee man, but he does a lot of flint knapping. He actually did this, but this is so cool. And this thing is heavy, huge. He's even got some like this, you know, different types of stones and rocks that he's used over time. These are impressive, they really are. Some of the rocks, some of the things he's done, we're going to get some of it put in the film here in a little bit. Vyrl, he actually was able to find a stone here in Oklahoma. They find it out east, I guess is the best way. It's called Cherokee Boom. He was able to name it. You have to cook it, you have to bake it, of course, but to get it brittle. But we'll get some footage of that. But in our filmmaking videos that we're trying to get out, we want to try to cover this. Now, this is something that's been it's hard to learn how to do. This has been one of the toughest things of all the things that I do and all the things that I try to make, and this has been the toughest so far. Flint knapping, it's an art. Knowing how that rock's going to break, controlling your breaks is the key. Getting them thin, but it's fun. It's aggravating at times, but it's fun. You'll get real close to finishing it, and then you'll break it in half. And as my co-worker Siobhan knows, she's heard me in the office a couple times with a few choice words that I happen to say, but she doesn't even have to turn around. She'll say, "Did you break another one?" But yeah, it's an idea. I usually broke it. So anyway, we hope to get some good footage out of this one. We're going to meet some very interesting flint knappers from around this area, and they're really good. So I'm learning as much as I can from them, trying to keep it, and then hopefully eventually maybe we can have some classes on this, and I can teach people how to do this. But stay with us here. It's going to be a good, interesting film.
Running the show. Makes a difference to the average.
So I want to introduce everybody to Vyrl Keeter. I met this gentleman a couple years ago through Darren Dirksen, who comes to our bow shoots. That he was doing some flint knapping, and I actually called him looking for some rock and didn't know where to get it and even know what to look for. So he gave me this man's telephone number, gave him a call, met him, and a good friendship has came out of this, and I really enjoy Vyrl. A man full of knowledge. He gets a group of guys that come over on Wednesday. They get together every Wednesday and do some of this knapping, and at the end of it, the arrowhead that you make while you're here gets passed around, so everybody can look at it. And It's not to make fun of you or anything like that. It's to show what you're doing and see what everybody else thinks. And they all have little secrets and ideas and different ways to go about doing this napping. And when you get hung up, this is the man right here that you go to. And I get aggravated. Almost every time I come over here, I get hung up with the problem. Vyrl will say, hand me that rock, let me see. And then he'll say, all you gotta do is this. And he'll tap, 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 and hand it back. And usually either I break that stone or I mess it up where it can't be fixed at that point. But the knowledge this man has developed and what he knows about breaking these rocks is just unreal. You'll see in this film some of the stuff we're going to take, get some film of some things that he's made, and it's just beautiful, beautiful work. Vyrl also, by the way, I need to mention, Vyrl is a Cherokee National Treasure, right,
Yes,
in flint knapping, and so he's Cherokee, and just you wanna speak a little bit here and talk a little bit, maybe tell kind of how you got started, or maybe who taught you, or
Well, a little bit of background, that I think that's what
Right.
you're interested in. I grew up west of Stillwell on and about Caney Creek, Horn Creek, and Mulberry Creek. Those creeks converge on our properties, about 6 miles west of Stillwell. And just a country boy there, and I began to find arrowheads, and I wondered how these things were manufactured, how they were made. I asked my grandfather, and he said, well, they picked up a rock and hit on another rock and made these things. That's generally what he taught me. And said sometimes they'll use a horn or a hard, any type of substance, and break the rocks and make them in the form of usable form. Then I began to go to different places where I heard of what was called knap-ins. That began later on. And I was up to about 16, 17 years old. And I saw how they were beginning to form these in and what type of materials was used. I began to find that you needed good materials to make good artifacts, a good working product. So I began to travel and find different types of material. That's how we came up with the different agates and the obsidians and quartz and those things to make arrowheads from.
Right.
And developed into this, and I began to go to different nap-ins here and there and pick other knappers' brains. There were some outstanding knappers that I relished. One of those particular persons was a person named Ron Fuller, who I used as a guru. And Ron was one of the best. He died at an early age of cancer of the throat. It was too bad, but Ron was my guru. He traveled with me to find materials and gather it. He worked for me at the ranch, my ranch, for off and on as he needed work. So he was just a wonderful guy and died at this young age, and I lost my guru.
Yep.
So now I had to depend upon myself and other people. So I began to pick other people's brains then at nap-ins and learn from each other, and that's how we go about now.
The copper they was telling me, it's a little bit softer, and so it'll grab a lot like the antler. And we're going to get some of that filming when we get back to the house, Mark, because I've been learning with both. I figured that with all of our traditional stuff that we do, that's important too, to see it being made with that. But our people adopted to the copper too when they started trading with the French with the copper stuff. They had a way to forge things, which I found out was pretty interesting, the way that they made forges back then. But I want everybody to remember, and I tell everybody when I go and do my demonstrations, our people evolved. Whenever they come up with a better way to do things, they took advantage of it. They were smart, and they took advantage of the metal tools that they come across. We traded a lot of our tanned deer hides for things like that. But I've had people say, well, how did you cut that tree down that you made that bow with? I said, with a chainsaw, and they said, well, was that traditional? And I said, well, I don't know about your ancestors, but I know if my ancestors would have had a chainsaw back then, they would have used it. I mean, they wasn't stupid. They took advantage of things like that, you know. And so, what we do today, regardless of how you take a piece of stone and get to that arrowhead, it still has to be done in the same way, regardless if you use the copper or if you're using billets, you know, the antler billets and hammer stones and grinding wheels and all that stuff, you know.
We're called the 5 civilized tribes.
There you go.
This is the better example of what he is explaining of the 5 reasons for the 5 tribes being called the 5 tribes, because they were more educated than the other tribes of Indians in the arts and science and physics of working issues. So that's why we call this the art of flint knapping. It is an art, and we use the physics of the art in order to make these tools. In this particular piece here, we've got one. This is Georgetown, and you can see the shape of it, and I'll look for the way the grain is in it, or the grain of the makeup of it. It was how it was formed. Here, this was formed as an outgrowth that stopped, so the flow of silica stopped in this shape. It's inside a wall or a cavity of limestone. As the silica poured in, there was a certain amount of space that it poured into that developed into this shape.
Right.
So that's what we have. So if we knock this horn off, we'll see. You see your heavier billet here. That one's not heavy enough. I need a little heavier one. Let's knock this little horn off here, and we'll have the major part of that. I would mark it off here first. I've got a pen. A lot of times I mark off where I'm going to have, so you can see that well, and there's where this particular object will come from now. If you get a good sight on the markings, I'll knock all the outside stuff from that, and we'd want to start on this to get this out of the way first, and which is why we have a little heavier billet here. Come off there, boy. I think if you talk to rocks, they listen to you better. If you talk softly and carry a big stick.
Yeah.
What politician was it that said that?
I don't know.
Yeah. Theodore. Old Theodore said, speak softly, carry a big stick.
That was Buford Pusser, walking tall.
Now we're cutting it down.
Walking tall,
Watch it all. As we get these particular, as you knock off those flakes, concordial flakes, concordial means it's curved some. You can take those, and that one is extremely shaped, would make a great arrow point for placing on for a hunting arrow. And then if we knock that on off, we break that into shape, which we call preforms, which is what he's working on there. See, if we've knocked that all the way down on one side, then we come from the other side. As the other side comes to that, you want it to meet about halfway or a little more in the middle, or in the center or middle, however you want to say it. And that's why I see how I come, and there's a ridge right down the center. It gives you the strength of your tool. And that's actually why that's where the strength is, so that it won't break on you. It'd be terrible if you started to kill an animal for food and your tool broke in the center before it got him down. So that's the physics of
You know, they would have used all these chips too, and it's just like last Saturday with our Creek Nation youth. We were down. They were making their blow darts, and the young girl that I had this year, my mentee, we was demonstrating that you could shave a piece of hardwood down, and I broke a bunch of these chips like that, and so she would just get down and get her a piece. And I've heard, Vyrl, that they say that the edges on flint or this chert is sharper than a lot of the medical instruments that doctors use to operate with.
good point. When the edge of a piece of especially the obsidians, what we're talking about,
Yeah.
the edge of the obsidian is sharper than that of surgical steel, which is used for surgery by the different doctors of America or Europe or wherever. The reason being is that put the scalpel under microscope, the edge of the scalpel blade, you'll see that it is jagged. The edge of it is jagged. If you put the piece of obsidian, it's flake that you've knocked off, put the edge of it under microscope, it will be extremely smooth, which is why doctors at one time used the obsidian for much of their surgery, because it did not tear the flesh as it cut in to do the surgery. Where a scalpel would, you put it back under and it kind of tears it instead of cuts it straight, and the obsidian cuts it straight so it won't be jagged to heal back together. So the rehealing of that is one of the great things that they thought of using that surgery. The Boone rock that I coined as a name comes from the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Management area in a small stream along it, and comes out of the banks of that creek that walks down. But other people were finding this, and it was quite popular with some of the knappers. So to come up with a name with it, it is a type of boon of flint or chert. We don't have flint in America, we have chert, which we call flint.
Something I didn't know, by the way.
Yeah. So I decided I'd call it Cherokee Boone, Salagi Boone. Simply because I'm a Cherokee. I named it, it's Cherokee, Salagi Boone. It comes out of the Cherokee Wildlife Management area. It comes from Cherokee County, under the Cherokee Nation. So it was obvious that that's Cherokee Boone.
Yeah, it fits it perfect.
So now it has that coin and that actual name. And this is a piece that's similar to it that I'm holding in my hand. This particular color looks good. One I'm holding in my hand is a piece of the Cherokee Boone. It's found in this area, and it works nice and makes a better piece. Here it shows the different colors. It has a cortex of brown or gold type, and then the inner part is a gray boone inside, which you find the boone rock. It's a general term for rocks around the areas. So that's how it got its name, from a Cherokee County in the Cherokee Wildlife Management area, and I'd say coined by a Cherokee, Vyrl Keeter.
There you go.
So that's how it got its name.
Just as healthy as it be, isn't it?
Yeah, and ornery as hell too.
That day we went down there gathering this rock, going in and out of them creek banks, and up and down through there. And I had
He'll work,
some,
he'll work,
I-
he'll work you to death.
once you know, I had a young man.
That's how you start it. Now knock the ends off. Yeah,
We'll go
you gotta watch
Blame it
Leon.
on Leon today.
Yeah. Throw a rock at him.
I'll just snap it.
In that special place, I'm sure.
See? As you work a piece down, you have to be careful or it will get thicker as you go toward the center. And you'll lose your thinness on it. So, and I made a bad, we call a hinge, where the flake went a little ways and stopped, then it broke out, and that's what we call a hinge. And then we work on what's the strategy in order to remove that hinge and to get it out of the way. Normally it's from the opposite side. You see the hinge where my finger points to, the ridge across there and a cliff. And in order to remove that or to get that straightened across, you must come from the opposite side and send the flake all the way across in order to take that out.
And while he's doing that, he's setting up, he calls it a shelf. You call it a shelf, don't you?
Yes, sir.
He's setting up a platform or a shelf. He's taking it off of one side and he's setting it up to where when he turns it over and hits it, then it'll drive across there. So,
All right.
see, I am listening to you, Vyrl, I promise. Just I get distracted. Leon tells me the other stories.
That's helpful. That's not distraction.
Oh, I see.
That's the way you can assist.
Okay, assist me. All right.
Now braid those edges to get your braiding is to remove whatever loose flakes that didn't fall off, small ones, and also to make it rugged so that your billet will catch and not slip off. So let's see what we can do with that. I set up a little bit of a platform. I'll lay this on my pad, so you can either do it with the pad or cover it with your fingers. And that doesn't allow the energy to escape. It stays in the rock and follows on through to take that hinge off. Now let's see if it will do that. So now the hinge is gone from the opposite side, you see, where I knocked it all the way across. There's that flake, and there's your hinge down there. Another little ridge. Flakes follow ridges. Here is your ridge. You can take this ridge out and remove the latter part of that previous strike. Let's try tapping it right here and see if there's enough strength on this side to hold your flake to take it across. We'll try to run it down that ridge, and there it went. Let's see if it went in two pieces. Let's put the first piece on right there. That's where I took it off. Here's the second piece up here. It's not unusual that they break. They break as they come off. And that's how we took that ridge out. That ridge going up through there. Took him all the way out, all the way across, and eliminated the hinge you had there, which is not good. Now to work this piece, we've got this piece side of it, and it's pretty good. You try to refrain from working the center before you work both ends. You work both ends first, then work the center. Otherwise, if you work the center portion first, you weaken that center portion, and your chances of breaking it in the center then are doubled. And that's why you find many pieces of arrow points, especially where they've been working on arrow points. I'll start back here now to the opposite end. We have worked this end. We'll come to the opposite end, doesn't matter which side. Let's start on this side now. I'll make the platform here. Platform is simply a ledge in which your billet can catch to bring your flake off. So we'll knock those loose flake off and roughen it. Come in now and lay it on the pad. I can hold it by my hand, but I like the pad. Does much better for me.
And it's got a distinctive sound too. You can almost tell when you get a good hit, can't you? When you hit it, if you hit it just right, it's got that good sound.
And we looked at this before we struck it. You see how fat it is here in the center, and we're in a thinning process. So I made me a little platform right here to strike. So I struck that, and now let's see how we did. Here's your flake, and here's your place flattened out now to coincide with the remainder of your blade. Now we still got this ridge to take out up here. And we'll hold that flake aside simply so we can see. We have a place to strike it here. Right here is part of the platform from the previous strike. We'll go down this ridge and bring it off. And we got the biggest part of it. Part of it stopped there in the center. You can see there's a little bit of a ridge, which now that is a hinge which is going to be difficult to take out. If I come out here with another one, it has a good chance of breaking another hinge right beside it. So if I come all the way back here and work back to it, I have a better chance of getting that smoothed out. So we'll see if it'll do. Always when you remove material, you lose a little bit of width. And you need, at this point, I need to hold the width as much as I can. So we'll try to even that up here as I set up the platform here.
And just taking a little bit of that extra time to set these platforms up and to work with it. I know I get in trouble because, you know, I try to rush things and I'm wanting it done quicker than what it needs, but I end up messing it up and ruining the arrowhead. So learning this part of it from Vyrl has been real helpful to me to understand that you just got to take that little extra time, don't you, and set it up just right.
Still got some. You have to be a little more precise once you get one worked to this shape or to this stage, because you don't want to you don't have the room now that you had previously with a lot of width to work with. Now you've removed most of your width. Now we'll start working from the end, one end at a time. I'll get the platform set up here by turning this edge. We call this a working edge. There's an edge, center line edge, and then there's a working edge. And we're working on the working edge now rather than the center line. I'm moving it. You know what the monkey said when his tail got caught in a lawnmower?
What's that?
Won't be long now. We're getting our piece down now. See how thin it is at this point? Little bit left here on the one side, thin all the way down here. We'll get that out of the way here in a little bit. As you braid, you can do some of your work by braiding in a certain direction, and you pull it and leave yourself a little bit of an edge to use for a platform to strike. There's a handful of flakes I took off. 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row. Took them off here. 1, 2, 3, right there. 4. Now we'll do when you get to this stage, now you're doing cleanup work. Now you'll have on there what this looks like when we started on your film. And now you can look at, see what it looks like after we get it finished. We're getting there. When you're at this stage, you come now to the pressure flaker and get the little small intricate thing out of the way with the pressure flaker. Less likely to make a big boo-boo, which is what I could easily do out here on the tip of this. Anymore. This is a typical biface, and that's about how long it takes one that's usable. You can come back and do the finish work now to make a usable point. What I would do.
seen you do worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
That happens, but-
Yeah, it happened.
Okay.
Got some good stuff.
Got it? If you look at the artifacts that have been found, that are actually made by people here in, well, we find them in Oklahoma. They were not made by any of the 5 tribes. A fact of history that we need to note as we go and look for arrow points here in Oklahoma now, and especially in eastern Oklahoma, not any of the 5 tribes made any of these articles. These were made long before the removal of the 5 tribes. So that's a misnomer sometimes that these have been left there by some of the 5 tribes.
All right, so this is what Leon finished while we were here. You know, we haven't been here hour and a half, and he done that. But just to show you real quick, here's the one I started on, and here's Leon's. I'm not quite there yet, but I'll take me another hour and a half to get, if I could get to this stage. And I want you to see how thin that is. It's beautiful. That's good work, Leon. That's nice. That is just the lines, being able to